Alright guys, so we have a roller now on its own suspension and steering systems. This car is kind of getting dusty, hazy from sitting around. A lot of kind of dusty overspray from all the bed liner inside and out. And you can see that, this is just all where it's been wiped on. A pretty nice paint job, but to be honest, I'm not a perfect painter, so there's little runs here and there, and just a little bit of like an orange peel to the paint, which would be, something you'd see like in a factory paint job on a brand new vehicle. But we're gonna make this thing really, really nice looking by sanding it completely. Anything that looks like it needs a little extra attention, a little run, or a little, texture, a little piece of trash in the paint, we're gonna hit it with 1500 grit sandpaper, and then really hone this thing down, this clear coat, with 2000 grit water sandpaper. And then you'll see a two-stage cut process for this car, being like a driver quality, using compound and then polish. So you can kind of see here where I've already just made sure that some of these little runs would come out. I've already kind of cut them down with 2000 grit. Just some more imperfections I've had, and but I'm gonna see it all get buffed out slick and get ready to assemble. Another reason you want to do this right now in this stage is, if you've heard me address in the previous videos, we've got all this metal sealed off, so now it's going to get a little bit of moisture, but I'm not going to be worried about it getting those cracks and crevices because of all the material that it's got on it now. So a little bit of moisture is going to get down in the car, just a little bit, and we're going to blow that back out. And but importantly, we want to get this done because anybody that's ever done this knows, like, it's going to be a lot easier for me to sand and polish all the way to the edge of this panel without the deck lid being there. The buffer would be hitting the other panel, and very important, like, we get this done right here without this trim on. Obviously, like, being a prime example of sanding buffing around this door handle. If we were doing that later after the car was assembled, it would be, hitting the parts, right? So that's why we're doing this right now. I want to get all the edges polished in, and then we'll see what this car is really going to look like. Alright, so just a quick tip on the water blocking, color sand and buff. If you'll notice on these, as I'm working this car, smoothing down the clear, this is a 1500 grit, just to lightly get out all the texture out of the clear coat, any kind of little bit of trash that might be in it. And I'm also using that cross blocking method that I've talked about in other videos, like working my body work, because even this super fine water sandpaper will leave like marks from your blocking. So I'm not going to get in one little spot and dig into that clear coat. I'm going to take broad strokes. I can almost feel, it's something I can't really describe, but I can almost feel the little bit of texture in the clear. and I can feel when it smooths itself out and sands completely slick. So I work the clear coat in this cross hatch, cross blocking method, like an X pattern, the same way I would like blocking primer, because we're just looking for that texture to be as uniform as possible in a big open panel, wide panel like this. So like I said, what I don't want to do is get in my fingers, if I just had my hand on the sandpaper or a block, and dig in one certain way, because even after it's buffed, you'll see like where it's been dug into, if that makes sense. So just a quick tip on color sand and buff for optimal results. Another quick tip is rubber boots. Keep my feet from getting soaking wet, because this is a nasty job. Alright guys, so once again we're going to look at some more water sanding techniques on the clear coat. I've got a 2000 grit here, sandpaper in my hands. I'm not going to bear down with any point of my hand on this pressure. I'm just going to let the sandpaper do the work. When it don't feel like it's cutting anymore, I'm going to discard it, grab another piece. I'm letting the sandpaper do the work. The pressure is not doing the work on this, and opposed to the blocking the clear coat flat and level with a 1500 grit on the block. Right now I'm going to take 2000 grit hand paper and lightly do like a swirl motion like this right here. And like I said, I'm not bearing down on this panel whatsoever. I'm completely letting the sandpaper do the work. And if you'll notice, this swirl motion is opposite from what I was doing with the blocking on the 1500 grit. And if there were any marks from yesterday with the 1500 grit blocking, this would kind of smooth all that in with these circular motions, if that makes sense. So like I said, now I'm doing two things. I'm cutting out the blocking marks or potential blocking marks from the 1500 grit blocking paper. And I'm also using this 2000 grit to sand out those 1500 grit scratches to make an even smoother finish on this clear coat. So it'll buff and polish even easier. On a little bit higher end paint jobs, we've been known to go even further, a further step with a 3000 grit. A lot of times on a foam D8 pad, so you may see that as another method, and that's great, just taking a step further for a show job. But as I referred to in this, in several videos on this particular vehicle, this is going to be a really nice driver quality. So although this is going to be just as smooth and clean cut as anything on the road, or even smoother than any factory paint job you'll see with an automotive manufacturer. There's levels to all of this. So this is the technique that I use with the 2000 grit. And when this entire car is completely sanded with this, then we'll go to the buffing procedure. another step of the process. There's many steps to get this thing right. So finally down to cutting and buffing this car, running buff and polish today. So I'm using a McGuire's product. It's a really good professional product. I use a three-step process with foam pads. So I cut usually twice. So this whole car, if you've seen from the last videos, sanded with 1500 and then 2000 grit paper. I personally avoid wool pads. To me, the heat and the aggression of it just causes a little bit more of a swirl effect and a haze. Some guys are great with it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying for me, I prefer foam. So you can, in your auto parts stores, most sell McGuire's. This is a M110, so it's a pretty heavy cut, pretty heavy compound. I'll run over it with a foam pad first, and that's what I'm doing now. So after this, we'll run over it with a polish. The part number is M210, same McGuire's product, and then I'll run over it with a polishing pad. Lastly, you'll see me hand wax using McGuire's Carnauba hand wax. And I take a black foam pad and lightly and slowly buff over or polish in the wax. So the cutting process, I typically run at 1800 RPMs on the buffer, cutting all the sand scratches out. Really aggressive compound, and like I said, a lot of times I'll run it twice with this. Part of the process on cutting these scratches out is using the actual friction, the heat. So when I go over it twice, it'll allow this clear coat to heat up and use the friction to cut the sand scratches, and then it cools. I'll let it give it some time to cool back down, and then I'll go over it again. A lot of times that brings some of those scratches back out that might come back later to haunt you. So after cutting it twice is when I start the polishing process. So I've cut half of this roof, you can see it there, just with a cutting agent. I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut the sand scratches out of this side and then run the polish over the entire roof so you can see that process. Alright, so the third step I'm going to be taking is the Carnauba Plus wax. And as we've referred to many times, this is a nice driver quality vehicle. It's going to look really nice driving it, but the car is going to see some road time. It will see bugs, it will see scratches and road debris. So we're not going the extra step for a little bit more of a show quality finish. There are a third finer polish you can use. Typically that finest pad you'd use would be a black foam pad. So note that there are finer polishes than what I'm finishing this with. But for a driver quality, I do a 2-stage or the wax and make it a 3-step process. So applying this Carnauba wax, I'm going to run in circular motions to make sure we're covering, all the paint and protecting it, all the clear coat, as well as just getting it down in those, those little micro scratches we caused it from the pad. So this is going to fill in what little bit of super fine scratches left. and get hard, and then I'm gonna wipe this off or buff it off with a black pad. Typically I'll let this dry for about 5 minutes just to let the wax get hard to the panel and do all the shrinking it's gonna do. Also, typically on these, the finest gray or black pad that you'll use, I'll slow the RPMs down to 1,000 on the orbital buffer. So just make note of that. If you don't want to use the last pad, a microfiber rag or a t-shirt would work well in this phase as well. Alright, so you can see that the panel come out really nice. And that's how I'll do the entire car, just one panel at a time. Getting it waxed, getting on, to protect it, so to speak, from all the, you kind of see the debris that just flies everywhere as we do this. So that's got that roof protected. I'm fixing to go to the quarter panel and do it, and then get it completely done, and then I'll go to the door. So that's my process. Instead of like cutting the whole car and then polishing the whole car, I go from panel to panel to make sure I have that panel exactly the way I want it. It would be boring to see this car buffed in entirety because it's probably going to take me about 2 days. So the next video that we'll be watching will be the cleanup process, and then finally a spray down to make sure that the paint's going to be protected as this car is parked for a while and put together. Alright guys, super excited. Today is delivery day for the Datsun 260Z. This thing was stripped all the way down to bare metal, blasted, epoxy primed, all the welded and rust repair done, all the body work in multiple stages, and a really nice paint job, bed liner inside and underneath, POR 15 in the nooks and crannies that it's hard to get to, and really excited to see how the customer gets his car picked up and put it back together. So check it out.